Good to see everyone. So this is the second class. We'll do a little bit of a quick recap, but we try to be as practical as possible. And in this class, we're going to try to be much more specific and also actually do some kind of role playing and try to be interactive if we're open for it. So to summarize last lecture, basically starting a company is extremely confusing because there's so much advice, there's so many thought leaders that tell you what you should do, but they don't really have skin in the game, right? They're not really accountable to if this works or doesn't work. As a startup founder, you have to take all that advice, follow through on it, actually implement it, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you are the one that has to take the fall, learn from that and iterate. So one way you can cut through all of this think and talk that people do when it comes around startups is to actually follow the money. So in last class, it was like, well, try to look for money, try to involve money early in your startup career and when you build a company, because that's the best indication and signal, right? So if people, that's how you can understand what people actually want and need and how they value, because that's the best signal. So today we're going to look at some specific examples of how money can help you run your company more effectively and do it better. Then we're going to quickly talk a little bit about how to not try to be too smart, and we're going to talk about why. And then we're going to head into specific cases and some role playing here. All right, so what more specifically, what happens when you start involving money and ask for money when you run a company, right? So one thing that happens is that it quickly changes the conversation. So you might have, talked to some customers. You might have asked for their opinion about your business idea or your product. You might done this like mom testing, they call it, where you try to ask smart questions to kind of decipher what they actually care about. But I find that there's no substitute in actually involving money. And when you start involving money, like the whole persona changes, right? So you're talking to some potential customer, you're like, well, it's going to cost this much, or this is how much we're going to charge for it. Then they'll be like, well, if I'm going to pay for it, then actually I don't want this part of the product. I only want that part of the product. And you're like, oh my God, that's so useful information for me to receive, right? I mean, but they didn't say that when it was free, right? Because they didn't feel that they had the authority to demand more in some sense, right? And so it's super, super useful. And then they want to make sure that they really get value back on their investment. So they're going to follow up like, well, if I am paying this, how do I make sure we actually deliver on this, right? How do we measure that? And that's exactly when you're in a company as well. You need to have success cases and you need to measure if it actually works or doesn't work. So it's extremely useful feedback to get. And you'll be surprised when you try yourself. It just completely changes the conversation. Right, that would be completely overlooked if you didn't involve money. Like everybody would be saying, nice, it's all great, until you start asking for money. That just completely changes the conversation. Prioritization. I also find that when you work with a company, they typically have tons of things to do. I mean, like regular people as well, right? But they have tons of things to do, think about in prioritization. I mean, it happens so much. So it's better to be top of mind for a little bit than trying to just always follow up and be very low over a longer period of time. And by asking for money and forcing them to actually make a buying decision, you can push yourself to be top of mind for a little bit and actually be prioritized for some time. And it's much better to be in the limelight for a little bit and actually get the feedback and make a decision, and then that process dragging on for a long time, right? That's extremely expensive for you. So if you don't push and you're too afraid to get a no, and you're like, hey, we can do a partnership, we can do it for free, you can drag on for a really long time. This ends up hurting you because you're wasting precious time. But if you involve money and ask for money, you force them to make a decision, and you can learn quicker. And a lot of times I hear people say like, well, you don't know what you have yet. You should not charge because you don't move quickly in the beginning. But I find that if I do something for free, they won't even prioritize it because they look at what they're spending money on and what they need to get back on their investments, and that's what they prioritize. If you're free, you just like a bonus, and they won't really care. Another thing that's extremely, time-consuming and energy-consuming when you run a company is to make decisions, right? How do you actually run a business? What decisions do you need to make to optimize your business? And before you have money changing hands, it's really difficult because you need to judge what people are saying and like experts and like you need to take in advice. But money can be the best decision maker because you can go to paying customers saying like, well, if we introduce this feature, how much would you be willing to pay? Or like, versus this feature. So you can try things out with your customers because they're already, you're already running a business, so you can optimize. Because a business building a business should be about building the business. It should not be about finding the business. Right? You want to have money changing hands early so you can optimize something. You have something you can optimize and actually run a company. You don't want to run around trying to find one, right? That's not the way to go. That's what I think. Yeah, and I think also worth mentioning, like a lot of times I find people come from academia where we love to make things, 5 times more complicated and 5% better or 2% better. That sounds like, in your isolation, like, well, who wouldn't want to have a 5% better product, right? And then you forget about, like, actually, if you try to make somebody pay for it, like, if it's 5 times more complicated, they won't use it, they won't pay for it. Like simplicity is something that, and ease of use is so important in industry. And before, when you just talk about it and you say like, well, we can make your revenue, increase with 5%, like it's all abstraction until it really becomes about involving the money and hearing what they really think. Yeah, and again, like last time, you minimize wishful thinking, right? You as an entrepreneur do a lot of wishful thinking because you want to be successful, you want people to like your products. But also your customers do wishful thinking, right? I'm in the AI space. Like a lot of people want, prioritize, even customers, they prioritize and want new, shiny, cool things, but they don't really want it long term. They just like, kind of do wishful thinking that their life is going to change. But like, end of the day, nobody cares about online technology, just care about the results. So like customers themselves don't really know what they want unless you make it like actually emotional and just ask them to pay for it, because then it'll change their criteria, and they'll be like, oh yeah, if I'm paying for it, we need to actually make up for this investment, involve more people, and they'll be more critical. So it's also really good to avoid, money is good to avoid wishful thinking for yourself and for your customers. All right, and when you also optimize for money, you're optimizing basically for the end goal that you have for running a company, right? You want to be able to make money as a company that's in this modern capitalist world. And if you're not optimizing for money, you're optimizing for some intermediate variable that you think is going to lead to money eventually. And that's just every time you introduce an intermediate variable and you optimize that instead, it just introduces a lot of assumptions and risk. And I just find so many times that I think that like, well, when I solve this thing, it's going to get money. It's not the case, right? So it's really good when you don't have to optimize for an intermediate variable. You can go straight for the goal. You're not optimizing for investment rounds or something else that can lead you astray, or like making people happy, right? You're optimizing for the money, and it's a really hard currency that you can use to guide yourself. Yeah, okay. I mean, people are emotional beings, and we make decisions based on emotions. The CEOs of the biggest companies also make decisions based on emotions. And like that's also why we don't bring up money in a lot of contexts, because we don't want to make it charged, right? We feel bad about bringing up money. We just want things to be nice and like, I don't want to talk about money. But that's why you want to talk about money, because it brings in emotions and triggers emotions in yourself and in your customer, and then you really understand what they're looking for and what their pain points are, right? You can look at how they react emotionally, which is the true, guiding star here in some sense. Yeah, again, right? For me, when doing all of this, like it's really going to be much less stressful to run a company, because you can really help, let the money and your customers help build a business for you. You're optimizing a problem that you're solving. You're not trying to find one, because like the uncertainty of trying to find something is the most stressful part of running a company, when you feel that you're in the complete pitch black, just running, don't know where you're running, right? Okay, some quick pitfalls that happens, just to keep an eye out if you don't involve or try to follow the money. Right, money will come eventually. Right, this is the most, I would say, common startup error. The founders use wishful thinking. They're like, well, money's going to come when I have the projects ready, when we're done, solve this and this, when we scale up. I just find that that's never happened to me. So I think there's a lot of wishful thinking, and if you cannot get some indication or some money already, it probably never will come, right? And you should use your time, focus on something else, and you should pivot. Okay, of course we have you listen to what people say. And even if you tell yourself that you're going to be more critical and not just take people at face value what they say, if you don't have money as a hard currency, there's going to be talk back and forth, meetings, and you can't help yourself as a human being to be convinced that oh, actually, this is a great idea, because you've talked about it so much. And you'll end up shooting yourself in the foot because it turns out that actually it was not important because money was not involved yet. So I think really, don't trust yourself. Okay, last one, you rely on investors. Again, I think it's just important to keep in mind that investors play oftentimes a different game. They optimize a different objective, right? They can, if you're talking, to an actual VC investor, the fund only represents maybe 1-2% of their own assets, right? So the person you're talking to, they only have 1-2% invested in the VC fund, and then they might make 20 investments. So they don't, they need to make you hit really big, right, or something. They have different types of things that optimize. They don't have at all the skin of the game that you have. So they play a different game, and that's very important to keep in mind, right? You're really alone in this. And there's a lot of times that I hear founders as well, well, as soon as they get investments, things are going to take care of themselves. They think that's some type of success, then they're going to be easy, from them on, or it's going to be easier. It doesn't get easier when you're taking investments. It gets harder. I mean, it might be the right decision sometimes, but it just doesn't solve your problems. Okay, of course, a little bit of disclaimer here. I am painting a black and white picture, right? I cannot, in this short period of time convey to you all the nuances. I'm just trying to push in a certain direction, right? It's not black and white. There's a lot of value being created by VC. There's a lot of value in the think and talk space as well. But I'm just trying to push you to consider different alternatives a little bit. And the last time as well, people brought up how does the importance of money work when you build more like a business to consumer applications of companies. And I think that's tricky, right? I mean, a lot of times you can involve money. I think that's also the best way to do it. But we have cases like Facebook, for example, where people didn't involve money. I think it's just rare exceptions, to be honest. But I don't claim to be an expert at a business-to-consumer app. I tried to build one once. I failed. It was extremely painful. And I don't think I will ever try to build a business-to-consumer viral app like that again, because I just think it's just not scientific, right? It's just so difficult because you need some virality, which is just so hard and fickle. Yeah, and then also, of course, there are business-to-business companies as well that have not focused on money and being profitable, but have been more venture-backed. But again, I think there's a lot of cases when you look at the context. A lot of times, somebody that has validated something a lot, like a CEO or a founder of some company, they know there's an exact problem, and they just take that business apart, create a new company from that, and know there is actual customers waiting at the end of it. So that's going to be harder for you to do. I mean, you want to build a business that way because you want to have the validation, but a lot of you guys are not CEO of a big company that know there's a specific problem that people are already willing to pay for that you can just go and start. So you really need to have money to validate your ideas because that's what they've done already. Yeah, and again, I haven't done it all, so my experience also is limited, right? Okay, so yeah.
How about spaces that require they're deep tech where you have to invest capital to them?
Yeah, actually, I think that's exactly the same. All the deep tech stuff is very. I think looking, how should I put it? It's almost a little bit corrupt in that really heavy, almost monopoly spaces come in and say well, we want this stuff, and then they can invest a lot of money because they know okay, there's some risk, but if it works out, they already have all the established channels, right? If you look at pharmaceutical business stuff, even oil and stuff, there's a lot of cases throughout history where it's big, like giant industry families and companies just know, like, yeah, if they able to solve this problem, they just have tons of customers willing to pay for it because it just ties into their business. And I think a lot of times as well, a lot of times you can do so you can be like, yeah, I'm gonna not build it I'm gonna invest somebody else building it, right? But when you come in as an investor, you're like, okay, cool, we know if they solve that, we have tons of, business for them. So it's really a different kind of beast. But then it's like, if you build something that's extremely deep tech, I think you really should find those business partners that like, who's the one to benefit from your breakthroughs, make sure they invest or help you out. And I think that's a much more valuable partner to have than like a general VC in that case, because you actually have a domain expert to know like, hey, if this works, we're going to pay for it. And that's something that we did in our company that I started as well. We got like the industry leader to invest. We just like, okay, cool. If this works, we know we have a paying customer. Yeah, does that make sense? Good question. Okay, so we'll see how this goes, but we're going to try to cover some cases. So we'll see if you guys are open to discussing and contributing. But I also want to try to, this is the way I like to go around doing this. Of course, you can do it any way you want, but I want us to try not to have to be too smart. I know we're in academic settings, but I don't want us to sound smart. I want us to be more skeptical. And I want, like, if you say something or somebody else says something, generally, right? Like, if it doesn't make sense to you on a deep level, like, don't trust it and don't do it. This is so true for a company as well. Like, you will fail and you'll feel so bad if you follow somebody's advice of what you think you should be doing, but it doesn't really make sense, in your soul in some sense. Like that wisdom you need to have. Otherwise, you're on very, very careful, like risky grounds. So make sure things that you say or that you take in really make sense on a more intuitive level. And then a lot of times as well, like in academia, we love to be like, oh, I'm so smart. I can take all this assumption. I can like put it together into complicated, reasoning patterns and stuff, and to do something that's like, oh, this is so cool, and like this really means this, like a really deep insight. Like, don't focus on the reasoning. Focus on the assumptions, right? And I think what is the most confident assumption that you can make about the world, so you can make very small but extremely accurate predictions and like inferences, right? Instead of trying to assume a lot and infer a lot, right? That I think is the best way to go when you're in a company, because it turns out a lot of times all that fancy reasoning just don't work out because your assumptions were off and there was too many, like probabilities in between the assumptions and your inference. So does that make sense? It's like, let's just try to be super, super not ambitious and just focus on assumptions. Okay? But this is now, I'm gonna try some examples here that I know this example quite well. So I can tell a little bit more. Some of these I also just want to discuss and learn, but I'll also tell a little bit what people did in this context and what happened. But let's see. All right. So case one, a AI generative company, right? So it's in the hype space, AI right now. It's doing 5 million in annual recurring revenue. It has mainly enterprise clients and some small medium companies as well. It's a 10 people team, okay? And basically, like, if you're in this team as a founder, what are some of the first things you would think about or focus on?
I would be thinking about, am I serving my enterprise and clients well? Is my product fitting to their needs? So is my 10-person team too small, too big? How are they doing? Can we grow?
Yeah. Okay, has anybody else some thoughts around that?
Maybe how do I go from 5 to 10 to 15 if you have the right team and if you have the right feedback from the customers to build the right thing to scale?
Yeah. Anybody else?
Of the features of the product that currently exists, what part are the enterprise as well? The clients really looking for? Like, is it what are they actually paying for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also a good point, right? What are they actually paying for? I mean, that's what we've been talking as well. Like, what are they actually paying for? So, I mean, yeah. Let's see what we can deduce, right? Like, okay, I think what are they paying for is really good. We know already it's an AI company, so it probably is following a meta trend, right? Which is good, but also risky. AI is happening right now. A lot of people want AI, so it's probably part of the value proposition, right? Okay, so what are people paying for? And I can say like, well, yeah, a fairly big extent is paying for expectation, right? Future value. They think that they use this company and they're going to be more competitive in the future, but the values are, a lot of times in the future because they just think like, okay, they need to invest in AI right now, it's happening. They might do it even at a loss, but they think the risk of not investing is bigger than investing because they want to stay competitive. Okay, so what does that tell us? If that's the case, like, what should we do, right? Yeah, we want to focus on growing the company, creating multiples of the revenue. We know a little bit why our customers are paying. What's the main thing you guys would focus on here, right? Like, I mean, I think there's a major assumption. I mean, there's a major conflict already that we kind of are circling in on, right? I think it's interesting. Yeah.
I guess, like, just in broad terms, just ensuring that like the product you're actually delivering has grounded and rooted value that will be sustained throughout, just like the hype phase.
Yeah, I actually think. I mean, I'm also like. I mean, this is. I don't know what the bad route is here, but I agree. That's what makes me the most stressed in this scenario is that, like, yeah, in this space as well, like, if so much of the value is promised to be in the future, that's risky, right? Like, the AI hype is only going to last for so long. I think we want to make sure that we actually realize as much of that value as soon as possible, because only for so long can you live on some promise, right? So I think that's a really good aspect as well. Okay, like, if there is actual value in this space, then let's try to actually make sure we present that to our clients so they make money and we're getting a cut of that, basically, right? Should be a win-win. I think it's very true. I mean, okay, yeah. What else, right? Like, yeah, what else, you guys? Nobody thinks we should raise money or just put the pedal to the metal?
Probably should release fast. So we know value proposition. We'll try to release fast to get feedback. And if it starts to work, switch to another stuff.
Yeah, I think that's true, right? But we're in AI space that's extremely competitive. It's a 5 million ARR. People spending hundreds of millions, right, on AI right now and in training big models and stuff, right? Like, how can we compete if we don't raise money, right? How much did Anthropic raise? Like billions. So what's your? I'm just curious. Like, nobody thinks we should go out and raise money, and why not?
Well, that depends on our business. So why we should invest? So is it hardware?
Yeah, training costs, I would say. So the more money you can have, the bigger you can train models, right? And the more aggressive you can be, right? Like with 10 people, you can, if you raise, you can grow to 100 people. You can really, overspend just to make sure that you win in the market.
Well, you can actually find some resources by utilizing some Amazon. Let's say they have some startup credits for initial things. So you should at some point, but you probably should back up.
Yeah.
I wonder if the money was going to be used for training and deployment if you can get that same amount of data through partnerships and more clients as opposed to getting the money first and then trying to buy that data or using that money to get more clients.
Right. I think that's also something that was like a eureka moment for me as well. Like, okay, like if you want to train, let's say a $5 million model, right? everybody was telling me that like you have to raise money to do that. But like, why don't you ask your customers to pay for it if they're the ones that are gonna enjoy it, right? I mean, isn't that interesting as well? But because clearly, if they're not willing to pay for that training, like why not, right? Why don't they feel that they would benefit from it? Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Okay, so I mean, maybe we established a few things, but I mean, there's no right answer here, right? So, and this is extremely difficult. But what if you just came into this company? What is the first thing you would do? Focus on? Sorry.
Tell it again.
Yeah. So if you just join now knowing this, does this change what you would come in and focus on, or what was the first thing you would do? Okay, so investor here. Okay, sorry. But yeah, would you invest?
Make up for me a little bit.
Yeah. So we have this setting, right? Company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I mean, yeah. So you're an investor. What do you want to know if you should invest or not?
About the company, size of the market. So I can give you a framework, general framework that we use. Like,
yeah.
It's the 4 T's. Team, TAM, timing, and tech. Right? So team, this is the right people to build it, and they grow it. TAM is the market large enough, and they might have like a path to go to that market and a wedge, right? Maybe we start in a beachhead market that's going to grow to a larger market. The tech, does it work? Does it provide value in a very material way versus the status quo in an industry that again is large and efficient? And is the right timing for that technology to get adopted?
Yeah.
Because the major risk is
Yeah.
adoption. So 5 million IRR is really good, especially if you have enterprise clients. For me, at this stage, it would be, are they growing in the same type of clients with the same product, in a repeatable product,
Yeah.
in a way that it's evidence enough that they're generating traction to grow even more, which is just a matter of, now it's a matter of sales. Can I build a measurable and repeatable sales motion that if I invest in it, I'm gonna get more ARR.
Yeah. It's interesting to get an investor's perspective, right? I mean, something that I think, like, this is something I think is very true. If I would join a startup now, or like startup one, like I think the team is so important, right? Like it's less about the idea, it's more about the team. And then I think it should also be is this like a meta trend that you're interested in, right? And it's more high level. I don't think that the total addressable market, like the TAM, is important. You can find your way to, it's just like so extremely hard to estimate accurately anyways. And you can find your way to making tons of money, whatever it is, basically, in how you grow. But I think you want to make sure that the team, you like a team when you think about joining startup as well, because that's what really matters, and that you think it's just the right trend. I mean, first off, it's going to be less useful and fun for you if you are working on like an oil product and you're really interested in cinema, right? It's going to, and also another thing is like, and then as well, I built a company around helping like offline retail, right? So brick and mortar stores. And it was hard as well just because you're in a declining meta trend. And I mean, I think it's a lot of opportunity in it, but I think as well, it just makes your life a little bit harder if you're in a market that's like people feel is shrinking and people are excited about. Okay, anything else anybody will add before we go to the next case? All right. Okay, let's see about this one. This is, a pretty traditional, like, 2010 case. I don't know if there's a case for people here, but let's say you're at university, you know how to code, you have built a social media app, right, that you think is pretty cool. Like, what's the first thing you do? What do you want to do here? I mean, this is maybe, yeah.
Look for like the surefire, like something that breaks like free from maybe like what conventional social media apps do, since it's already very saturated field, saturated industry.
Yeah, so you look for if it's different somehow?
Yeah.
And how would you do that?
Maybe like a pilot to see, who's like, if they're interested in this as compared to the others or some of the apps that already exist.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Maybe like, I don't know if it's the same thing, but like ask for like beta users around and see like ask for their feedback or something.
Yeah.
How you will earn money on this sort of application.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it will be data usage or like advertising, whatever.
Yeah.
So way of monetizing.
Yeah. So what happened in scenarios basically, right? These are all good ideas. So this was, just piloted basically with friends and friends of friends. People like, oh, this is exciting. This is really cool. It's serves a purpose, right? And so then basically they recruit a team, right? And like, okay, this is cool. They recruit a team now, and they released it on college campuses because it's like social media, and they're like, okay, college campus is like a nice, market that they can attack one at a time and try to get users. Like, kind of makes sense, right? So they get initial usage, some growth even, and they get some users, but then it just stops. There's no growth. They just like, you get some users, but even now it's like, you start to see more of the churn, right? Some people leaving after a while, which always happens. So yeah, like, does that make sense? Like a little bit an update where we are right now, and what do you do? Any ideas? So we did, you guys were a little bit, right? We did some of the things here that you guys suggested. We did some piloting. The barriers was basically friends, right? We didn't ask them to pay or anything, but they were, enthusiastic input in the beginning. It launched on college campuses, and there was some traction, some users, but now it's kind of stopping, and there's some churn. What would you guys do in this situation?
I guess part of me would wonder, like, so they only release to college campuses. Are there maybe like other audiences? And depending on like what type of social media app they made, or are there other audiences that might receive it better?
Yeah.
Depending on like what they made, maybe workplace or somewhere else.
How could you learn about that? What's the way you've learned about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, maybe you could try similar, like mini pilots, but try and, I guess, use people who are in those different like audience spaces. But that's the first idea that came to my mind, but maybe there are other ways you could go about it. And then aside from trying to see it, maybe a different audience receives it better. Maybe look at like whether this was the right idea to pursue, or it's time to move into something else.
Right. For sure, right? So basically, like a lot of the work was how to learn about this as well, right? We go to college campuses, we say hi, right? Imagine you sit and there's you by yourself, you have your phone, and you go to a group of college kids, and you're like, hey, how are you doing? Have you heard about this app? And then you show the app in time to download, to give feedback and stuff. First of all, that's extremely painful to do, right? There's a lot of rejection stuff, but that's one way to kind of get it in people's hands and stuff. That's how you get some initial traction. So that's what we've been doing. And then also what we're starting to see is that there's different types of user bases on the app. Some are like college kids, some are older, some are interest groups. So it's like what is this app, right? Like, who is it for? Does that make sense? So, there's some other information here. So maybe, yeah, okay, so, so that's a situation where there's a little bit all over the place in terms of the user groups on the app. Does that mean, maybe wait for this a little bit, but does that change, like, okay, so what do you do, right? I think something that's clear, if you want to release a product, it needs to be very clear what the product is doing for you, right? The value proposition. And now we have multiple different types of user groups. Like, how we fix that? Do we cut somebody out? Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you can identify your different like user bases, then you might want to like take some time to monitor which ones are sticking more, like actually coming back and using the platform, which ones are leaving more. And you could maybe take a path to say that, okay, this user base that's repeatedly coming back, let's try and expand more with them and see, do we see the same kind of results in a specific group.
Yeah, no, awesome. Okay, I mean, who knows what works, doesn't work, right? I don't necessarily know what happened, but yeah.
I would like to know the sources of churn, right? And where is it located? Maybe in different customer segments, or if it's a wrong customer, so it's, let's say, a marketing problem, we're bringing the wrong people in, or if it's a product churn, which is the right people came in, but the product is not delivering what it's supposed to deliver.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think first, like, okay, it's like, we're talking like thousands of users, right? It's hard to get statistics on really like, significant things about the usage. It is quite difficult with that few users, which is a very typical thing. People get a few thousand users and it's like, okay, cool, we're onto something, but it's very hard to get to like the 100,000 to saying, okay, and actually, also then, Snapchat releases a similar product. All right, what do you do? What do you guys do? And like, let me tell you actually, which I think is interesting. You know what? I'm not gonna, but like, you know what the biggest challenge in this whole process was? It was that, you're a team that are excited to build this app that's supposed to go viral, right? When you release and stuff. The team pressure that happens when you're releasing something and doesn't follow through on those hopes, right? That was the biggest challenge of this whole thing, to actually keep the team together. And that what made this thing fail. Like, the team just exploded sometimes because there were so much expectations and hope that like it would grow and stuff, and when it didn't, we started turning on each other, basically. I mean, I'm not saying this is like my exact examples, but like that's like this case, which I think is interesting, right? Like, we didn't even think about the team, but like that's the number one reason why startups fail. And this is the case here as well, right? So all the different things didn't end up mattering because as a team we were not mature enough to deal with not this naive, Facebook happening to us, right? Okay, but yeah, all good points. All right. Early investors. So you're in this class, you meet some people, you like, okay, you come up with a really cool idea, you make some deck and stuff, and you have investors come in and say like, hey, cool, we want to support you and raise you, but you're like 10 people, you're too big. Your team is too big. What do you do? This is very common. I'm just curious. Yeah?
Are we assuming that they're saying it's too big because you gave everyone 10%?
Yeah, I think just saying that you can't have 10 founders.
Yeah.
So, I mean, also just saying like 10 founders doesn't make sense. Like, they're just like, who's the boss, who's important, right? How should you split your equity for sure, but like, it doesn't even make sense to have 10 founders for sure. It's like, and maybe they'd be like, these are all 10 MIT students, they all think they're the shit, they're gonna want something, this is gonna, but I'm not, yeah, sure.
I don't know, it's probably too big if your investors are saying that it's too big, and the fact that you're starting a company with people at your university, they're probably in your circle of friends or your classes, makes me think that you're super concentrated in the skills that you have. And if you have 10 people, you definitely want them to be pretty spread in terms of what their capabilities are.
Yeah. So, I mean, so also basically you spend, after this class, you spend roughly, not full time, but you spend a decent amount of your last 8 months while you're in school working on this, okay? And then, let's say they want you to leave. right? So you were basically promised 10% equal cut. You spent 8 months working on this part-time. What do you do if you say, like, we want you to leave? How would you feel? What would you do?
It's going to be hard to maintain whatever relationship you had with those people after that. But I would at least try to make sure we're on a good conversation for our efforts.
Yeah. What kind of compensation would you expect?
Yeah, we're probably monetary, but just prorated, say some salary price, let's say $40 an hour. So, a lot of time they spend.
Can I give the investor?
Yeah,
at least?
please.
This seems really odd. I don't know that you can counter that, but I think investing and fundraising, when we see us with our own investors, it's a matching game, right? So you need to find the right person who's going to support you, the right person that believes like you believe in the product, the market, the future, and all that. And this just sounds to me that they might not be the right investor for the company if they don't believe in you or the company.
But do you think? I mean, do you think? What would you say as an investor if there was 10 people, 10% each, and they're like, cool, we're gonna do this now, equal splits, and like we're in this now. You see what I mean? And like this is their first startup, and they're just in school still. How would you?
If I like 2 or 3, let's say, I've never encountered this, so I'm just telling you on the go what I think my process would be. But I would try to see if there's 2 or 3 really with proximity to the problem that I'm really passionate about, that would probably anticipate people leaving.
Yeah.
And I will ask them to have a structure of people leaving if I like where they are and how they're building it. But most likely I will pass.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I mean, I think this stuff happens very regularly, I think, in like startups and, beginners create, they split it evenly and stuff, and they're excited, and like reality takes a little bit where it's like, okay, cool, this is not going to be just a hobby thing, we have to go all in, and we have to decide who's actually going to go all in on this stuff. Yeah, I mean, when I was starting out my journey, I think I had a much more emotional perspective, but that's also why I think like there is so much risk in joining a startup, and like there's no contracts that are really gonna save you. That's also why I think it's so important that you focus on the team. Like you have to, you're gonna assume it's going to be. I mean, I think it's going to be up to the judgment of your team. A lot of times, like how and your superiors stuff, right? How what's going to happen to you. So you have to really respect them, like right beyond if it's a good part or like it's hype, whatever. Like, do you really trust the leaders and the team here to feel they're going to compensate good people and keep the good people? Because like no contract, I think, is really going to save you. And also like. I also tended to focus so much on like, oh yeah, what's the contract, what's the details? But if the leaders are good and they're selfish and want to create a good company, if you're providing value, they will want to keep you, right? If they're mature and stuff, of course, if you're a beginner, like who knows, right? Like, I mean, this is just going to be 8 months and it's like more random, right? People don't know each other yet and stuff like that. It's a very short time in terms of startup. But if you're a startup and you're creating a lot of values and it's just really expensive to get rid of you, you are going to be compensated for it, right? Otherwise, the company's shooting themselves in the foot. And I think also that's good to keep in mind, right? Like, yeah, I just think it's like, yeah, if you join a startup, I would worry less as well about the equity that you promised when you join. I'd be like, how much value can you create here? How much do you trust these people? So that if you come in and you're just like a star, you will be compensated, for that. Because that's when I judge, like also who knows your value before you join. But I always felt that I want to have it on paper before I join. But how do they know your value? They don't. And if they think they do, that's just naive. And then you're gonna have some ceiling to what you can deliver and get. So also something that I just think worth to keep in mind is there's no real safe bet, and the best thing to look at is like, do you really respect these people, and do you think that when you create value, you make yourself invaluable, will they have the company best in mind and keep you around and compensate you? Because you can just say like, well, I don't like what I'm getting, I'm gonna leave if I don't get more, and they're like, okay. if they're then thinking in terms of best of the company, they'll be reasonable about it, right? Yeah. All right, that's pretty fun. Okay, next one. Hard times. So you have raised 20 mil when things were good, pre-COVID, right? Money's cheap. Things are getting a little bit more difficult now. Economy is worse and stuff, COVID happened. And investors come in and say like, well, you gotta cut your costs. And you have a product right now, if you have, you're trying to create a business, but you have one product you built, it's not profitable, but it's creating some revenue at least. And it's the only thing that you have that's creating revenue. But they're saying like, okay, you have to cut it. It is not, it doesn't have the potential to be big enough because, you were valued at 200 mil, you need to be $1 billion. You can't focus on just running this thing that is making, 5 million a year or something, let's say. Does this make sense? I think also quite common. Yeah, thoughts around this. What would you do and how would you think about this?
Maybe this is, I don't know how fleshed out of an idea this is, but I would guess that maybe at 20 million valuation, you've at least had some time to get to where you are. And so perhaps there's maybe some record of like, if you have 1, 2, or 3 maybe things you're working on, products you're delivering, you might be able to track like which ones are growing fastest. And I could imagine maybe in this case that the only revenue generating product is one that maybe has been stagnant for some time. And maybe that's why. I'm not sure, but
right.
So all that to say, I think like in that case, what I would think to do is maybe to look at like which of the products are showing that growth projection to be able to be the one that makes it big and.
So I think one thing I can take away immediately, like in this, like maybe they want to reach $1 billion. They're at 3 to 5 mil right now, right, in revenue. Like all this, there is no growth projection, right? There's no sense. Like all this, like basically, there's no numbers to follow, and the only numbers they had, the investors are like, who gives a shit, So. And then, what happens is, what I think happens is that, okay, they're like, we can increase our runway a little bit by letting people go and reduce our costs. But they have to sit down now and say like, well, we're in a space somehow where we have a product that we need to cut, right? That's the only thing we really have that people think is big enough. And then like, we have maybe 1.5 years of runway. We have 1.5 years, basically we have one bet that we can make to make us $1 billion valuation company. And typically the method you have to pick and focus on is not that maybe revenues, just some growth in terms of users or something. Yeah. So like imagine that you're sitting now, right? Investors telling you like you better get me some money. I invested 20 million in you. I want to get my money back and more. Like good luck, good luck racing again. If you lose my money, like, you're done, right? And they like cut this product that you have and then give me something, give me a 1 billion valuation. Give me something, give me 1 billion valuation. You sit down yourself, your founder, first off, you have to cut your team from 60 to 30 at least to reduce costs to get some runway. And then you have to decide what can you pull out of your ass that you can kind of convince is going to create a 1 billion valuation for some other investor or something, right? So they can get rid of their. Can you imagine the stress and uncertainty of being in the situation? Like, what the hell are you going to do, right? 1.5 years is nothing, right? And you basically say like, you have like 10 mil, but like you have to. You basically start a company from scratch again. You're like, okay, I can't do the things. I can't follow the money, which I have some revenue that I believe in. I build a business. I have to completely ignore that signal and find something else that like has the potential to be a 1 billion thing. And if it isn't, which it probably won't be, right? You're in a really tough spot. Or is it like, I don't know. Or is it like, no, it's fucking awesome because, it's awesome because like I've raised a lot of money and I can go into different, meetings and dinners and stuff and be like, I'm a startup person, right? For 1.5 years and be like, I raised 20 mil. Look at me, I'm a success. Do you see what I mean? Like, that's the story that a lot of times comes out in the, on the cover of it. They're like, oh yeah, I made it, right? They're like, oh, congratulations, like, you raised 20 mil, like you're killing it, I've seen your Instagram post and like, all this stuff, right? No, I just think it's interesting. Okay, well, okay, these are more fun. Let's see. I was sorry on the class, but okay. So let's say this is a very typical situation. You want to hire somebody for your startup. Does anybody want to, like, give me some? Like, say you want to hire me and you want to start. If am I good to join your startup? Does anybody throw out some questions or what you would do, what you would ask or say? Like, what comes to mind? Yeah, Emily?
Are we hiring you?
Yeah, you have an interview with me. You basically, I think you're interested in hiring me, yes. You just, like, you can decide what startup is, what about it, like, make up a scenario, but yeah, you're trying to hire me.
To your point on how important the team is, I would want to make sure that you can work with the existing team. So I would probably ask you some questions about how you have worked on team projects in the past, what you're working on right now, what that dynamic is like. Ideally, we get to work on like a pilot project together.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think, of course, if we talk about like talk is cheap, you can't really ask people what they are good at. You can ask about their experience and try to double check that, right? And then you can really try to understand, like, okay, well, say you know something, right? You've done something. Try to understand if they actually have gone through the pain of building it, so you can understand, like, okay, is this actually true what they're saying? And then I think, as you said, like, yeah, there's no way of finding out without trying it. Like you can't hire somebody based on 10 interviews. Like, you have to work with them, in a realistic scenario. You can, that's how you really get to know each other. And also, it's really difficult to hire somebody at a startup you don't know from before. It's like a 75, 80% chance they won't work out, I'd say. That's my experience. Like, you can maybe join somebody that you already worked with before, try something before, but yeah. So I think that's one way, like, you learn how to think and ask in a very theoretical way, and then you try to hire somebody and you're like, oh, it's so off. Another thing as well, it's like you're gonna feel, it's feel like, you really want this person to join, because you think that, like, oh, if they join, it's gonna make my life easier and stuff. But I think you should, like, in most cases, like, they will be gone in 6 months, and it's just gonna make your life in total much more difficult. Like, hiring is like, it's really, really costly from your energy and focus and stuff, and most things don't work out. So I think also you should actually, like, don't try to seduce them, try to push them away. Again, you're dating, right? Like, hey, try to push them away, see if they actually are committed and really want this, right? And it's a really good fit. Because if you get somebody to join because they're nice and they want to try it out, it's the worst, right? Again, like dating, the worst thing is not being rejected. The worst thing is dating somebody for 2 years, realizing that you could have understood that, at the first date, that this is not a good fit. But you're both nice to each other, and you wasted 2 years of your time trying to make it work. And it's the same with, like, hiring a startup. Like, it's better earlier this is not going to work. And if they, like, I would be so sad at the beginning, like, oh, they don't want to work with me, they don't like my idea, don't like me. But it's like, thank God, better to know it now than later, because I'm gonna be worse of a person when I'm stressed or things are shitty. Anybody else wants to ask some questions? Hiring questions? Or, like, yeah, do you guys have experience with intuition or what do you do? I think there's no right answer, and there's, like, multiple roads to Rome here, right? I think everybody has to follow their own. I'm just sharing my experience.
I guess one question I would ask is, why you were interested in working in this company. You have other options, like why this specific company you want to look at. And another question I would like to ask also is, I'll probably give you a project to work on, like maybe something that's like relevant to the business, and ask you to give me give some timeline within 2-3 weeks. So you can work on that and bring it back.
Yeah, we can work together. I think that's great. Like, hey, let's try this together. But this also happens often. Okay, but I'm an MIT PhD student. Like, I don't want to tell you my secrets and stuff, my research, but like, I mean, clearly I'm interested in your company, but I want to have an equity offer and I want to have a high salary. Yeah, what do you say?
That doesn't indicate to me that you got a strong desire to
But if you're going to work for free, or what's the...
No, we're working for free, but like, as in like you care about the task, because what we're working on right now, we change, but the company might pivot to a different space. I'll need you to be with me on that domain. So maybe that information would indicate to me that you would not be willing to stick if we're going against them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extreme. I mean, I guess, but how would you? I mean, so you just be like, okay, interview's over. Like, I don't like that I asked for equity and like a salary offer up front, right? I mean, these days, well, like it's almost like illegal, right, to post a job offering without having a salary and like everything ready up, right? But yeah, but I think, I mean, this is extremely common. Yeah, I think that's extremely common. But again, I think it's a little bit. I wouldn't do it that way in terms of. I mean, if I would join somewhere, because again, it's like I would try to make sure if I was interviewed to understand, like, okay, what have you done? Like, what do you value? What do you think is important? Like, who's in your team? So I can know, like, who are you promoting, right? That's gonna be important to me to know. Like, do I respect you? Do we have similar values in terms of what we value? Yeah, and if somebody tells me as well, like, this is what I want, like, yeah, I would say, like, oh, this is gonna cause a problem because they're so new and they're so insecure. I mean, they're still so unsure about how things work and their own contributions that they want to have everything clear from the beginning, which don't exist in a startup, I think. Okay, cool. Was that else? Yeah. But also another thing actually happens a lot is that people say, like, this is so, they're like, yeah, I'm like, okay, so, this is what we do. Start. Like, if you come in, what would you focus on? And then they say, well, if I tell you what I would do, I'm giving away my value for free. How do you respond to that? This happened to me multiple times. And I think I used to think a little bit more like that as well. I'm like, I'm so smart. I know a lot of shit. Like, I won't tell you like everything, in an interview, right? Like, that's what you have to pay for. I mean, okay, so let's just do some simple. I mean, what's the underlying assumption that's wrong here in some sense, right? Yeah.
I mean, one thing is to say what we do, and the other thing is to execute it. Right?
Yeah.
I like to see it. I like the ideas too, and see we can exchange ideas.
Right.
And co-create value together by, the addition of the discussion 1 + 1 has to be more than 2 in this sense. Because if you only have your ideas and you're not open to co-create, then you're going to go alone and build something that probably won't sell or it doesn't incorporate feedback. So it's very rigid in that sense.
Right. I mean, I think you're great. Right? I mean, there's there's difference between the talking about it and actually doing it, right? And like, if the underlying value that they can contribute can be provided in a 10-minute conversation, like, that's ridiculous, right? That's no value. And if they think that's the value that they can bring, it's like, oh, I won't tell you because in this 10-minute conversation I can like change your life and company. I'm just like, what the hell, right? Yeah, like, I mean, the world would be a very different place if that was the case. Yeah. Okay, next one is fire me. All right. So we're a startup. We're like 10 people, 6 people, and you don't want to work with me anymore, right? But I joined very early, but you think I'm not performing well, I don't fit in. Just try to fire me. We'll see what. We did this. I did this in the class as well, and I think it was extremely funny because I think firing somebody is very different in real life. Has anybody ever fired somebody? Yeah. Okay. So wait, no, don't go first. But somebody. What do you want to just try?
I mean, I can have the picture of like the overall goal as to what I would want. Like,
well, how would you? What would you go going into the conversation?
I would want to, in a way, still fire you, but in a way that doesn't like completely tarnish the relationship.
Yeah.
And so like maintains some semblance of like decent relationships. Because who knows, like.
Yeah, I think everybody wants that. But okay, so what would be your first? Like, how can let's say you start going? I think it's so fun. Like, this is my experience, but I've been there. And let's say you go into a conversation. We're in a room now, and I'm like, okay, hey, so what's your name again?
Mercy.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Rich. Like, how's it going? You want to talk about something?
Wow. Honestly, I have no clue how this would go.
Okay.
But I don't know. Okay. But I did, and I don't know. We've been looking at your recent performance or something, and
What performance?
And, I guess like I would say something. I don't know. Maybe specific, like your results for a specific project.
You're already screwed. You're screwed. You are so screwed, and he'll jump on that, and it's gonna be chaos.
Yeah.
Like, and also imagine like being fired. It sucks to be fired, but also like a lot of times it's the first time they're getting fired, and they feel so emotional about it. Like they are willing to like kill. Like like they're just so. They'll feel so rejected. It's so difficult. They'll jump to that coming like that. They'll jump on that, and you just be like, no, I didn't mean to upset you. I didn't mean this. And it's like, what do you mean performance? What's wrong with performance? I'm the best performing person here. Like, what do you do? Like, I actually write the code. You don't do shit. Like, you're already there. Okay. Somebody else wants to try? You want to try?
I don't think I'd be any.
Okay.
I think it's difficult because they are very attached to, I guess, like the team, because it's a startup environment. So
Yeah.
I don't know how you would go about doing that.
So maybe if we turn around then, if you would be getting fired, like, if you actually try to imagine yourself that you're getting fired, like, just imagine yourself that you're getting fired for some project that you like still care about and you feel rejected, right? It's like somebody breaking up with you, right? But like it's even in a stranger way. Like, right? Okay, I think this is a case as well, right? What's your initial feeling? Do you feel like you've been there for 1.5 years? What somebody says when you're getting fired, like, will that change anything, right? Like, can they say the situation by like trying to be emphatic or like, oh, I understand that you must be, like, do you think that, what can you say to make the situation better? I'm just wondering, like, if you get, like, do you feel like there's something they can sugarcoat it? Like, do you think that like you can be like, yeah, you've been there for 1.5 years, but now I'm going to say you something really deep and nice to you, and you'll feel better? Or will you just, whatever they say, you will just interpret as like, reasons to be more annoyed, right? And also, like, imagine that you're going to this minefield and you try to say something carefully, and then you're like, you can just do basically, you can only screw up. I'm just wondering. When I think about it, it's like, yeah. I might follow up on things I want to know and have a session about it, but like, when I'm getting like this, just like, that's a lot of things to take in. And this, like, if somebody says to me like, like, we really wish this could have worked out, and you've done great on these things, but like, and like, it doesn't work out because, we feel this in this way. I mean, what the hell? Like, I'll just be like, no, I don't agree with that. That's your thing. And like, it just makes me frustrated to even think about it, right? I don't know, but yeah. I think that's fine, somebody, I think, but like, it just, in a startup as well, I think it's different. I mean, maybe if you're a big HR team and stuff, and it's like nothing you can do. In a startup, people always feel there's something they can do, and they feel so involved. And of course, you know each other. It's like more, it's like not friends maybe, but still a little bit friendly, right? And it's the trickiest thing. But I don't think I've ever been able to say something really that.
Yeah, but usually the situation is not like happens that yesterday it was okay and now you decided to fire. It's like several weeks, months, and probably discussing it with this person.
Yeah.
So the person is mostly knows about that you're trying.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, you're right about that, I think, for sure. But still, you'll see. It always comes as a surprise still. I mean, people, because even in the moment, they might feel that something's going to happen, right? But when it happens, it's just like, it's so charged. I mean, that's my experience. It's just so charged. Yeah. So I did this role playing in one class, and I was the one getting fired. And I was like, I remember I was very careful, but I was like, I was a little bit upset because they were firing me. And they were like so surprised in this room that I would get upset with, and I would like jump on things. Like, I mean, there's like, I don't know, there's no sugarcoating, and like, you can try to be like, well, I'm really nice to you, and like, I'm saying that I understand, and I say I feel, right? You're not supposed to jump on me because I'm just saying I feel. Like, in my world, like, it doesn't matter. Like, you are in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, so in your experience, have you found that it's just better to just be super direct and straightforward?
Exactly. I think that's what I'm coming to.
Yeah, how do you then like maybe handle questions they might have as to like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm very open to like, I think this is also how I want myself, right? I think I'm gonna like, okay, this sucks, but I have to let you go. And then they'd be like, no, okay. And then it might come to questions, and I'll probably try to be like, okay, let's book a schedule, let's book a meeting in a few days or next week or something where we sit down and talk this through. Yeah, so they have a little bit of time to kind of act. Most people, I mean, it's the same, like, as you as a person, like, everybody comes on and get more reasonable if you give it time, but in the moment, everything explodes. And like, in startups, I know myself, like, I mean, we're just people, and we get really, really emotional, right? Even if we understand what's going on, even if it's the best for both parties, it's extremely emotional. A startup is extremely emotional, and people don't talk about it enough. Like, it's just an emotional roller coaster of people that are tired and like stressed and things. That's the probably most difficult thing, the emotions. And if you're a founder, you have to be the one that you can't really complain to anybody. You have to just kind of deal with it some other way, because you're supposed to be the captain that's stable. Okay, let's see. Oops. Okay, we have one more example. Okay, I think this is also, let's try to sell to me. Somebody thinks that they have something they want to sell, and how they will go about doing this?
Sell to you as your customer?
Yeah, I'm a customer. Right, so yeah, what's the first thing you would ask? What would you do? I think this is something that this again, I'm not saying this the right way. This is what I found. It's something that I overlooked in the beginning. To abstract again, right? Again, if you just reason from first principles, like, what's the first thing you would try to understand if you're trying to sell to me? Which I think I think it's really basic, but we forget about it. So let's say you're selling an AI product, whatever you want. Like, can somebody tell me what the first thing you will focus on?
Your pain point.
My pain point?
Yeah, in general. If you have some pain point, you're ready to pay for.
Okay, so what could be examples of pain points?
Depends on if you are business, for example.
Yeah, we're an enterprise company. We are. What's it called? Okay, let's say we're Amazon. So we focus on the
Which
page
part of Amazon?
with the e-commerce part.
That's not might be fair for some
But-
supply chains, and I probably know way point.
Okay, but yeah, so we're I mean, right? So, but I'm optimizing the consumer experience on the Amazon website.
So just Jones, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll try to decrease this level of churn, so we will increase the ratio.
Yeah. All right. What's the assumption that you're having? Can somebody spot the assumption? I mean,
Like you use for increase your profit.
Okay, sure, right? I mean, you have an assumption. Do you have an assumption that I want to increase my profits? Okay. Somebody think that's a reasonable assumption?
Or you could increase your share, for example.
Yeah.
Share of market.
Okay.
Beat Walmart.
All right, Amy.
If this is the first call, I would not assume anything, and I would go in and ask you, what are your headaches? What are you dealing with right now? And the assumption I want to answer is this problem big enough for you to bring someone like me in with the product that I have? And does my product actually solve your problem?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I mean,
Just to add to that is, I think it's a discovery process at the beginning to understand how you experience your life and your day-to-day, and see what features of the product that I'm selling will be most enticing to you, and where can you keep on. It's like
yeah.
an open question, right?
Right.
If you could solve your problems, what would that be? And then what if I can tell you that I can solve these by this much?
Right. So, I mean, okay, I think this. Right. And also we talked about the think and talk layer, right? Online reality. Like, why would I be interested in Amazon's profits?
Because you want to get some share of it.
Do I get a share of it?
You get money for increasing this share.
Do you think my money is like? Do you think that I feel or it's directly tied to Amazon's profit, the money that I'm making, right? Let's say I mean, you don't even know who I am, but let's say I'm just like I'm not C-suite level, right? I'm a middle manager, but responsible for a lot of the customer journey, right? Like why do I care about profit?
You don't care about profit, you care about solving a problem and getting money for that.
Okay, cool, right? But I think, do we know that? Like, I mean, I think this is something that I'm always so surprised by, that like, this is not abstract business, it's just people. And you're sitting with somebody across the table, and you'll be so surprised because their motivations and objectives are so different than the company they work for. Like, and if you don't understand that, you can go wrong so early. Actually, more often I find that people that work company, their salaries is more linked to their budget and the number of employees that they have under them than with the profit of the company. So they literally think about how can they get more employees. So while you're sitting there talking about solving problems for Amazon, increasing profit and stuff, they're just thinking about how can you increase cost for their department so they can have more employees and bigger budgets so they get a higher salary. And they can switch to, they can have a bigger team to look better for their resume, and they can jump to another company.
So you're basically establishing a relationship with your, not customer, but persona yourself. And getting this persona problem, not company.
Right. I mean, I think first of all, I think it's just remove all the abstractions. Understand what this person is actually optimizing. Try to understand, like, who are you talking to? What's interesting to them?
Yeah, what I was going to say was, I think that's an interesting point. In that case, you probably try to find someone within the company that has the incentive that's aligned with.
I think that's. I mean, I think that's what I try to do, because I literally think as well. This talk and think layer and action layer exists in a company. Most people, I mean, which is very valuable, right? You shouldn't ignore it and create a lot of value. But if you want to come in and be dependent, not on politics and stuff, but create value in terms of bottom line, try to find those people that you can line yourself with, And if you do find, which most people are, like they are motivated by something slightly different, you have to try to pitch them and say like, well, if you help me out, it's gonna benefit you personally. And of course you don't want to be too blunt, right? Because it gets, but you do have to understand how that works, because that's what moves people to even just give you a second meeting or talk to somebody above, right? And a lot of this is very different for start, because you come in and you sell to people that you're trying to replace. And that's super tricky, because they're like literally like no, like what? Why should we use you? You're like threatening my job. And again, it's all this talk happening, but it's not about the underlying reality, which is very different. You all sit there for an hour talking about how to increase Amazon's profits on the e-commerce website, but he doesn't care at all. And he's like, this is a waste of time. And he's like, okay, I learned something about who's trying to replace me. I'll try to be counterproductive to your efforts. And it can be, again, it can be small things, but we're just people. Like, you might want to just be like, oh, cool. If you have to get a second meeting, like, I'll really make sure to mention you and say that you were super good to talk to and helpful. That's how they have some things in the game, right? Okay, I think it was actually very fun. That's all I have. Is there anything else that you guys want to discuss or talk about before we leave? Great contribution. Again, right? Like, this is all think and talk. We don't know if it's going to work or doesn't work. This is an exercise in like, well, maybe things are a little bit different when we try it out than we think. So the only way for you guys to find out is actually like try it out yourself, right? But I just wanted to kind of push a little bit of a different angle, which is a really simplified view, but what's your takeaways? Was it interesting and helpful?
Why did you choose those? I think there were 7 topics.
Yeah, I just thought they were interesting, and a lot of places and dinners and stuff. A lot of these things comes up, but I think the take on it is so theoretical, right? Like, it just doesn't apply. And I just find myself when I actually try to do this, it's just so different. And also how it appears from the outside versus the inside. I think there's just a big disconnect. And I did this so wrong in the beginning as well. Hiring or firing or joining things. I was so off. I think I couldn't help myself, but I probably base a lot of my understanding of startups from the Social Network movie. It was a good movie that was emotional. It stuck, right? Because it's a good movie. I was like, oh shit, that's probably how it works. But I don't know. I think role playing is really good, because when you try it out, you get a little bit of an emotional response. You're like, oh shit, you get surprised a little bit. It's a good way to simulate and just challenge yourself a little bit. Like, what if it's this case? What if that's the case? Yep.
And say in your startup journey, what has been an area that's come as the biggest surprise to you compared to what you might have preconceived?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's just so much. That's also what I think in the last lecture about the importance of money. I cannot understand. I can understand, but that I didn't. This idea that had the only thing that matters is $1 billion, and everything up to then is just not important, right? It's only getting that 1 billion thing. But I understand, to get to 1 billion, you really have to hit a lot of benchmarks in terms of a company to find your way there, right? It's not just you find something, it's you go up there without that signal. It's just really, really hard. And I thought no, it's about ignoring, it's about being smart, make our decisions, understand human psychology, and then find your way, and then you're at $1 billion. But no, the money is really helpful to get there, to get that signal. And how I really felt so bad about bringing money up, even in conversation, how it was so not cool to talk about money as an instrument. Nobody even asked people about the revenue. They ask about how much did you raise? Like, how much did you raise? Like, you talk about so much other things, then like, okay, but what's the revenue? Like, are you profitable? What's going on? Like, you can go to a startup thing and nobody even talks about it. You just go around, hey, I'm Richard, I've raised this much. It's like, okay, so you're telling me you're in debt, right? Like, what are you even doing here? Like, but I mean, that's also, but then again, it's think and talk layer, because you look at Forbes and stuff and you're like, well, the only thing that matters is to raise money, and that's how you become successful. It must be the case because they're in the newspaper every day, right? This is what we celebrate, and this is what we optimize for, and this is the heroes of the startup space. And then you're like, well, if that was not the case, the whole world would be mad, right? Because we're celebrating these things, and everybody's like, oh, cool, they get interviewed, they get invited and stuff, they get to meet presidents and stuff, right? Like, and like, okay, clearly that's what you should optimize, because otherwise the whole world would be mad, right? But again, I think that's like, yeah, the whole world is mad. It's the think and talk layer. It's not about running a business. It's about appearing things, right? Like, right, a big AI company that raises tons of money, not make any money, get invited to speak to Obama or something, right? I mean, like, what does it to do with AI and building value, right? But you think it does, and then people optimize that and like, oh, these are the stuff, and you're like, that's, I mean, it sounds mad, right? A little bit. I mean, it is. I think it's mad. I mean, it doesn't make sense because they are not the ones ending up creating the value in most cases, I would claim. But those are the ones we celebrate until we know who the real contributors are eventually. But I mean, famously, there's like so many fraudsters that are on Forbes 30 under 30, right? Like, it's very different to optimize your hype and optimizing value for customers, right? And what you focus on, you get good at. That's like I think it's probably a much stronger correlation with being on Forbes 30 under 30 and being fraud than it is to being actual contribution, right? Like, it's a better indicator somehow.
If you consider it as a resource, right? If being, I guess if having your company be part of that hype cycle is a resource, you can realize for your company to grow. I think that's one path that you could
Yeah, I mean,
capital,
right.
Access to customers.
Yeah, no, that's what, I mean, I think that's right. I think it's just much trickier to do in practice. Because again, I mean, so hype, of course, and hype yourself up in hype space can be super useful. You can ride that wave. But also it's super dangerous. You attract the wrong type of people, right? You optimize the wrong things. And it's like, yeah, it's really hard. I think also it's really hard to go from meeting Obama to actually sitting down and coding something in your absence, trying to build something, right? You're just like, it's hard to jump there because you already also think you're successful. I mean, this happened to a lot of founders. It's like, oh, does this mean I'm successful now? Is this going to be live from now onwards, right? So I think also it's like being around candy, right? It's hard to keep yourself diligent and focused and stuff if you focus on the hype, and that's what you build your skills in as well. And I think if you rely too much on hype as well, it can turn very quickly. I think it creates fragility in your company where like, yeah, you're in super hyped crypto and then the trend switches, and then like, again, you're working with clients and they'll work on you because you promise AI in the future, and then like, times are tough now, where's the value? And then they let you go. Right, like so many times as well, where I've been, sticking around, multiples, investors told me like, do this, hype, do this and this, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't make sense to me deep down. I've been here before, I sense something, let keep my head cold, and then so many competitors that die because they raised tons of money, burned a lot, and then like things change and like, oh shit, we're screwed. So I've just seen it multiple times. Every time I want to be like, oh, maybe I should just do it, right? Maybe I should just jump in and follow the hype. And maybe at some point I should, right? And I try to sometimes, right, do both, but yeah, does that make sense?
If you find yourself agreeing with kind of like the roadmap that your investors are laying out for you, then how do you maybe negotiate that balance between you wanting to, like maybe like the guys you mentioned, like kind of avoid it initially to fail versus like your investors' expectations for where your company is going?
Oh, great question. Also, Great question. I was thinking about something. Yeah, let me just add to that thing as well. I mean, as an entrepreneur, when you run a company, you're going to be so pissed by feeling that, the hype space hypes up the wrong people, and you feel like it's gonna be one of the, like, keeping your head cool, right? Like, it's one of the most difficult things. Because, like, I mean, a lot of people, like, everybody talked about crypto a few years ago, and then they changed to AI, right? Like, this is the general person. Like, of course, OpenAI went all in AI much, much earlier, and now they're like, oh, it's a success case, but like, they were doing it before anybody thought it was gonna be. It was a huge bet the fit scaling laws would hold. Like, they did. I mean, so what I mean, so like, and you're gonna be so annoyed for so long. They're like, why are they, like, some competitors, like, why are they getting all the limelight and stuff? They just talk. But that's what it optimizes in talk. About investors, I mean, but I think it's difficult. Yeah, if you find the right investors and stuff, but to get, you can have a better conversation and you'll more, that's what I try to think about when I talk to investors as well. Like, okay, what's the investor that I'm gonna actually work with, right? He's gonna be on the board. I'm gonna report to and talk to, so we get along and I understand what they're doing. Talk to other people they worked on before, see they're reasonable, and also make sure that this, like, the investor that partner I will talk to, that he, won't just work somebody else in a year. So I know that, like, okay, I established this is the person that I will actually deal with. So I think they're reasonable and good, and hopefully good as well, even when things are tough. But I think that's like, it's a little bit like a marriage. I think it's difficult to change things once they're decided on. So make sure you pick the right people. And again, I think it's a lot of times the people, right? The right people with the good reputations and stuff that you have references on. I think, yeah. Do you have something to add about how to have a conversation with the VC if you disagree on the vision and stuff like that? Yeah, how to have constructive, if the VC, like, if you have two different, if the VC is like, no, you need to do it this way, and then you feel like, I want to do this way, and then you disagree, like, what's?
I'll answer it this way, right? The favorite founders that I have are the ones that come to us with an ask on how to approach a situation, right? Okay, just yesterday I had a coffee with someone that's trying to understand how to expand their value proposition. Either it's like more clients in the same segment, or go deeper in one segment and offer more value where they're experiencing traction. And I like to have those conversations, and they will ask me, what do I do? What would I do in their shoes? And the ones I like the best are the ones that usually come back and they tell me, look, Sarah, I did the opposite of what you told me to do. But our conversation made me think about the problem that I have and the situation I'm in, and I was able to make a much more informed decision thanks to the talk. So I like those founders that they're open to feedback, but because they're there 24/7 and I'm there, like, I don't know, 2/7 once or 124, right? Or 1 hour in 7 days, something like that.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, you invest in someone that can take the company to the right direction,
Right.
and can also listen not only to you as an investor, but also to other people and the customer.
Yeah.
So in my view, it's like, if you know that's the right thing to do, you have to do it with conviction, but you have to take it.
Right. No, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think clearly Sebastian is also a very, compassionate investor. But yeah, I mean, this is also what I think. This is true about, I think, a lot of things about leadership, and like, if things are going well and you're succeeding, things are so much easier, right? And like, investors, like, talking investors and like employees will stay, and everybody's happy, and it makes sense, right? Like, probably the most important thing if you want to work for somebody, or like joining a startup, or like your boss, whatever it is, if they're continuously winning battles with and for you, you'll stick around because you're like, okay, it doesn't really matter how nice they are if they just lose and lose. So like, that's also something to keep in mind. Like, the real challenge. Of course, the real challenge is to be successful and win most battles, and like how to navigate and stay cool when things are not going well. That's extremely difficult in terms of your personal strength and emotional stability and stuff, because investors are going to tell you like, no, you can't handle this. You're not doing well, and then you have to be like, you have to somehow have some stability, and you've been in this situation before, so you can be like, I've been in before. This is what we do. And you can give confidence in the people around you, which is extremely difficult. And I don't just think you get too many chances if you're not successful. Like, people won't stick around unless you win more battles than you lose.
The other thing that I've seen is that usually technical founders, they love to build something, right? And they love to do everything they can do to push that technical solution, sometimes ignoring what the market is telling them. And I've seen instances where runway is very short, it's like 3-4 months. And in that situation where, let's say, they're cornered, to actually be honest with themselves and distill what's happening, that's when they feel it, when they learn, and it's a process, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I thought I was adding value here, but now I need to focus on this one, which is not as glamorous as before, but I'm solving a real problem. And I don't have time to mess around or to wish, like you said, like money talking again, right? To have wishful thinking that, maybe I'll find the right customer somewhere, I'll find traction, I'll sell what I built. Instead, they have to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, it's so classic. I mean, I think everybody has to do it. I've spent so much time in my life building things that nobody ended up using. I mean, so much, and it's so painful. And that's what I'm saying, like, money can help you, destroy that fantasy much earlier. Because it's like, yeah, it's fun in your bubble to build this and imagine, because you are imagining and wishful thinking, like, it's going to be amazing when I release this. You can't help think that. But it's just going to be very painful eventually when that dream is shattered. And that happens if you don't have a clear signal. Okay, awesome.